Another common situation that you hear about when you're talking about currencies is whether the US dollar has gotten stronger or the US dollar has gotten weaker relative to another currency. And this is something that sometimes people get pretty intuitively. Some people struggle with identifying whether a currency has gotten stronger or weaker. The easiest way to think of it is in terms of purchasing power. Can I buy more of the foreign currency per US dollar or buy less of the foreign currency per US dollar? If I'm buying more of the foreign currency today with each US dollar than I could before, the US dollar has gotten stronger. It's more powerful. It can buy more of the foreign currency. If I'm buying less of the foreign currency per US dollar today than I could before, the US dollar has gotten weaker. It's not as powerful. It doesn't buy as much in terms of the other foreign currency. So let's look at a couple of examples. Start with the euro. Today the exchange rate is 0.7074 euros per dollar. Last month the exchange rate was 0.7167 euros per dollar. Has the US dollar gotten stronger or weaker relative to the euro? Well, let's start by looking at last month. Last month, $1 could buy 0.7167 euros. Today, the same dollar can only buy 0.7074 euros. The dollar is buying fewer euros today than it could last month. So dollar buys fewer euros. And that tells us the US dollar has weakened relative to the euro. So because the US dollar is buying fewer euros today than it could before, the US dollar has gotten weaker relative to the euro. Now, one thing I always want to try to add, and sometimes I forget to do it, I won't penalize you guys for it on a quiz or exam situation, but I want to always try to state weaker or stronger relative to a specific currency, because there are lots of currencies out there. The US dollar has gotten weaker relative to the euro. It might have gotten stronger relative to the yen or the peso or any other currency out there during that same time period. It's not necessarily true that the US dollar is weakened relative to all currencies, but we do know that it's weakened relative to the euro based on these numbers. Now we're going to look at the real. Today the exchange rate is $0.5493 per real. Last month the exchange rate was $0.5050 per real. Has the dollar gotten stronger or weaker relative to the real? Now here we have to be careful, because before we were dealing with foreign currency per US dollar. Now we're dealing with US dollar per foreign currency. So last month, 1 real could buy 0.5050 US dollars. Today, 1 real is buying 0.5493 US dollars. Since the real is buying more US dollars today than it could last month, the real has gotten stronger relative to the US dollar. If the real has gotten stronger relative to the US dollar, that means the US dollar has gotten weaker relative to the real. So because the Brazilian real is buying more US dollars today than it could last month, that tells us that the US dollar has gotten weaker relative to the real, or the Brazilian real has gotten stronger relative to the US dollar. It's the same thing. The last thing that I want to look at with currencies is cross-currency exchange rates. One of the nice things about currency exchange rates is we don't need to know every single exchange rate for all pairs of currencies. As long as we know all the exchange rates relative to the US dollar, we can figure out the exchange rate to any other currency out there, so any pair of currencies. For example, the current exchange rate is $0.5493 per Brazilian real. Also, the current exchange rate is $1.4137 per euro. So we know both the real and the euro exchange rate with the dollar. Based on this, what is the euro-real exchange rate? Now, when we do this, we want to be careful, and again, it's an idea of leaving the labels in, make sure we're left with what we want. We want euros per real as our answer. So when we get our answer here, we want it in terms of euros per real. In order to do that, we need the euro in the numerator, the real in the denominator. So we're going to start with the euro, $1.4137 per euro. We want the dollars to cancel out, and we want the euros to be left over, and we need the euro in the numerator. So that's 1 euro per $1.4137. Now we need those dollars to cancel out, and we need the real in the denominator. So we want the dollars in the numerator, 0.5493 dollars per real. And now we've got a dollar up here in the numerator, a dollar in the denominator, so those are going to cancel out. And we just take the 0.5493 divide by 1.4137. 0.5493 divide by 1.4137, and we're left with 0.3886. When we round that off, it'll be 0.3886. So our exchange rate is 0.3886 euros per real. What if I was asked for the real euro exchange rate? The only difference is now I want the reals in the numerator and the euros in the denominator. So I want real per euro as my final answer. So I'm going to need to start with the reals. As I go over here, 1 real is equivalent to $0.5493. I want the dollars to cancel out. So $1.4137 is equivalent to 1 euro. Now I've got my dollar in the numerator, dollar in the denominator. Going to cancel out. So all I need to do is take the 1.4137 divide by 0.5493. 1.4137 divide by 0.5493, and I have 2.5736 reals per euro. Now, one last thing I want to do here, if I take 0.3886, which was my first answer, my euros per real, and again, just hit that 1 over X key, notice I get 2.5733, which is essentially the same answer here with a little bit of rounding error. So another way to get this second exchange rate, the real per euro, would have been just use the 1 over X key. The idea of cross-currency exchange rates, though, as long as I know one exchange rate relative to the US dollar and another exchange rate relative to the US dollar, I can figure out every pair of exchange rates. So I can carry a lot of information with fewer numbers by understanding the idea of cross-currency exchange rates.